For a while, the busiest restaurant in town was not a restaurant at all. It was the mall food court. You could smell pizza, orange drinks, cinnamon rolls, and pretzels before you saw the glowing menu boards. Plastic trays slid across counters, chairs scraped, families circled like cars in a parking lot, waiting for one table to open. That was the magic. One person got tacos, another got a burger, another got cookies, and everyone still ate together. But the food court had a hidden weakness. It did not create the crowd. It borrowed it from the mall. So if people still want pizza and cinnamon rolls, what actually disappeared? Before the modern food court, mall dining was scattered and more formal. Department stores had tea rooms where shoppers sat down for plated meals. Some had cafeterias with trays and steam tables. Others had lunch counters, snack stands, or a restaurant tucked near an entrance. Those places served a purpose, but they were not built around the whole mall. A family still had to agree on one menu, wait for a table, or split up and meet later. For mall owners, food was useful, but it was not yet a central machine for moving people through the property. The origin of the modern food court is sometimes debated because several malls experimented with clustered dining, but Paramus Park in New Jersey, opened in 1974, is widely cited as an early purpose-built example. Its food area was not an afterthought. It placed multiple quick-service vendors around a shared seating space, turning lunch into a mall feature. That design changed the math. Pizza, burgers, sandwiches, and sweets could all operate side by side, while customers used the same tables. Groups no longer had to choose one restaurant. Service stayed fast, turnover stayed high, and the mall gained a reason for shoppers to pause without leaving the building. For developers, this solved a major problem: how to keep people inside long enough to spend more. Developers quickly realized the food court was not just a place to eat, it was a tool for controlling the flow of the mall. A centralized dining area meant restaurants could share tables, trash service, cleaning crews, and utilities. Instead of every tenant needing its own seating, the mall could pack more food options into less space. That made leasing easier because a small pizza counter or sandwich shop could afford a spot that a full restaurant might not. For shoppers, the appeal was choice. Parents could get coffee, teenagers could get fries, younger kids could get pizza, and nobody had to leave the building. The meal became fast, flexible, and easy to fold into the rest of the trip. For the mall owner, the location mattered as much as the menu. Food courts were often placed in upper levels, far wings, or spots between major anchors because they pulled people toward areas that might otherwise feel quiet. To get lunch, shoppers passed storefronts, kiosks, sale signs, and window displays. On the way back, they passed them again. That is why food courts became traffic generators. They added noise, smell, seating, and movement to parts of the mall that needed energy. A busy food court made the building feel alive, and that feeling helped nearby stores. The food court was designed to sell lunch, but its real job was to sell another hour at the mall. That extra hour fit perfectly into the suburban mall lifestyle. A weekend trip could include a department store, a movie, an arcade, a few clothing shops, and lunch under the same roof. For families with cars and time to spend, the mall was not just retail, it was the day's entertainment plan. By the 1980s and 1990s, the mall had become one of the few places in suburban life where everything could happen indoors. It was climate-controlled, brightly lit, and built for long visits. A family could park once, walk through a department store, buy school clothes, check out a music shop, see a movie, play arcade games, and meet near the fountain without ever stepping back outside. Escalators, glass elevators, neon signs, and wide corridors turned shopping into a routine form of leisure. This mattered because suburbia was spread out. Many neighborhoods had fewer sidewalks, fewer town squares, and fewer casual places where people could gather without planning ahead. The mall filled that gap. It was easy to reach by car, familiar to parents, and loose enough for teenagers to feel independent. The food court sat at the center of that social arrangement. Parents used it as a resting point. Kids used it as a bargaining table. Teenagers used it as a meeting spot before wandering the mall in groups. Shoppers used it to pause between purchases without ending the trip, and the brands gave the mall its strongest sensory identity. You could smell cinnamon rolls before you saw the counter. Orange chicken samples pulled people from the walkway. Pizza, pretzels, burgers, burgers and frozen yogurt created a soundtrack of trays, soda machines, and shouted orders. The food mattered, but the bigger power was recognition. A mall could look like any other mall until the food court made it feel specific, familiar, and alive. The food court worked because it had a familiar cast, even if the exact lineup changed from mall to mall. Sbarro was the oversized slice under the heat lamp, easy to grab on a paper plate and eat between stores. Orange Julius represented an older kind of mall refreshment culture, with sweet blended drinks that felt closer to a treat than a meal. Cinnabon turned baking into advertising, using cinnamon and sugar as a signal that carried far beyond its counter. Panda Express became another kind of anchor, the reliable Chinese-American combo plate. Orange chicken, fried rice, chow mein, and sample trays made it approachable for shoppers who wanted something filling without leaving the building. Then there were the snack rituals. Auntie Anne's made pretzels visible, rolling and twisting dough where customers could watch. Great American Cookies turned dessert into a display case decision, with giant cookie cakes and colorful frosting. Hot dog on a stick added mall theater, with bright uniforms, lemonade shaking, and food that looked designed to be noticed. Not every chain appeared in every mall, and each company had its own business story. Some grew aggressively, some adapted, and some became tied to a specific era. But together, these brands explain why food courts were remembered so clearly. They did not merely occupy rented space. They gave the mall its flavors, its rituals, and most of all, its smells. For teenagers, the food court turned the mall from a shopping center into a town square. The ritual usually started with a drop-off at the entrance. Parents pulled up, gave a pickup time, and drove away. Friends met by the fountain, near the escalator, or under the big clock. If plans changed, someone used a payphone, feeding in coins and hoping a parent answered. Once inside, the money did not have to stretch far. A slice of pizza, a pretzel, fries, or one fountain drink could justify taking up space for an entire afternoon. Teenagers sat in groups, left to walk the mall, came back, and passed the same people again and again like they were circling a small downtown. The food court worked because it was cheap, visible, and public. The seating was open enough that adults could see what was happening, but loose enough that teenagers did not feel watched every second. Cinemas, arcades, record stores, clothing shops, and parking lots were nearby, so the food court became the meeting point before and after everything else. It also solved a practical problem. It was warm in winter, cool in summer, dry when it rained, and safer than hanging around a street corner. For teenagers, the food court was not the break between activities. It was often the activity. Of course, this was not universal. Mall access depended on geography, transportation, income, and local culture. Some teenagers had a mall nearby and parents who could drive them. Others did not. But where the conditions lined up, the food court became one of the few places where young people could be together, spend very little, and feel briefly independent. For restaurant operators, the food court was not just a place with hungry teenagers. It was a business model built to lower the risks of opening a full restaurant. A tenant could rent a small counter instead of a large dining room. The mall supplied the seating, the bathrooms, the lighting, the climate control, and the steady stream of people walking past. Pizza shop, a Chinese takeout counter, a sandwich place, and a pretzel stand could all fit into spaces that were much smaller than a street location would need. The crowds were already concentrated. Shoppers came in on weekends, families stayed for hours, and holiday seasons could push thousands of people through the building in a single day. Customers did not need to make a separate trip for lunch. They were already inside, carrying bags, waiting for friends, or taking a break between stores. A food court could look like a collection of independent restaurants, but every counter depended on the same invisible ingredient: foot traffic. That dependence created weaknesses from the start. Vendors had to operate on mall hours. Even if their best sales came during a few lunch and dinner rushes, they competed directly beside similar choices, sometimes only a few steps away. Storage was limited, deliveries had to work around loading docks and mall rules, and rent could vary sharply depending on the property and the location inside it. The best food courts made these trade-offs worth it because the mall itself itself acted like an engine, pulling people past every counter. As long as department stores, cinemas, and major retailers kept that engine running, even a small stall could survive on the flow. But when anchor stores began to weaken, the invisible ingredient became less reliable. Department stores were not just large tenants at the ends of the mall. They were the reason many shoppers entered the building in the first place. A family might park near Sears to buy appliances, walk through the mall for clothes, stop at a card shop, and then eat before leaving. Someone returning an item at JCPenney might pass a shoe store, a music store, and the food court on the way out. The anchor created the trip, and the smaller stores turned that trip into a longer visit. That was the domino effect in its healthy form. Anchors generated visits. Visits fed inline stores. Inline stores gave people more reasons to wander. The longer people stayed, the more likely they were to buy a pretzel, a slice of pizza, or a drink. When the anchors weakened, the same chain started working in reverse. A closed department store removed a major reason to visit. Fewer visitors made life harder for the smaller shops. When those shops left, the walk between the parking lot and the food court felt emptier. A shopper who once passed 20 open storefronts might now pass blank walls, temporary signs, and security gates. Food vendors felt that change quickly because they depended on impulse. Most people did not drive to a traditional mall just to eat at a counter-service stall. They ate there because they were already shopping, waiting, browsing, or killing time. Once the department store trip disappeared, the food court lost more than customers. It lost the afternoon-long rhythm that had made those customers hungry in the first place. The food court did not vanish in one clean wave. It split into different futures. In stronger malls, especially those with luxury stores, entertainment, tourism, or dense suburbs around them, the food court could still be busy. In weaker malls, the same layout became harder to support. Some properties turned into outlet centers. Others were redeveloped into offices, apartments, medical clinics, schools, or mixed-use districts where shopping was only one part of the plan. The restaurants adjusted too. A chain that once depended on mall traffic could look for customers in airports, university campuses, highway travel plazas, outlet malls, city centers, delivery apps, or smaller standalone shops. The idea was not always to abandon the mall. It was to stop relying on one kind of mall visit. At the same time, a newer format started getting attention: the food hall. A classic mall food court was built for speed and volume, usually meant national chains, bright menu boards, shared seating, plastic trays, and meals designed around shoppers who wanted something quick before going back to stores. A modern food hall sells a different experience. It often features local vendors, curated design, craft drinks, communal tables, events, and food that looks good in a social media post. Many are placed in downtown buildings, renovated markets, transit hubs, or mixed-use developments where people might come in the evening, meet friends, or stay for drinks after dinner. But food halls did not simply replace food courts. They overlap, but they serve different markets. A thriving regional mall can still have a packed food court on a Saturday afternoon. A downtown food hall might attract office workers at lunch and adults at night. The bigger change was that eating away from home no longer needed the traditional enclosed mall to make sense. What we miss is not just giant slices, pretzels, cinnamon rolls, orange drinks, cookies, combo plates, or plastic trays. It is finding a table, guarding everyone's bags, splitting up to order, running into friends without planning it, and turning a cheap meal into an afternoon. The restaurants sold the food, but the tables gave people somewhere to belong. Thanks for watching. In the comments, tell me the food court place you still remember first.